This is the Real Footy Podcast. Coming up, the Swans stay alive for the finals just after a gritty win over a shaky Fremantle and get set for it, Collingwood and, wait for it, Gold Coast in a Friday night blockbuster. Nate Caddy was in the clear for an ump bump, and we will discuss the AFL exploring a radical new fixture change. All that and more right after this.
Just watch Nate Caddy there. He was just trying to get down the contest. The umpire didn't see him coming and started to move. I'm not sure that's Nate Caddy's fault looking at that first glance. He's just running to get to the goal square as he's allowed to do.
Bullocking through traffic. Close has got to get on the end of another one here. He gave it to Jezza for 700. Jeremy Cameron joins the 700 club. And the crowd rides for him.
And Maynard smothers and bangs it in the McStay direction. He's got it. They flood back. Lipinski charging goal, but McStay kicks to the unguarded goal. Collingwood doing a number on Carlton.
Hello and welcome. My name is Michael Gleeson, and joining me today are Jake Nile and Peter Ryan, with Caroline Wilson off presently, and condolences to Caro after the recent passing of her father, Ian, the former president of the Tigers and significant AFL figure, Jake.
Yeah, look, Ian, known as Octa Wilson, was obviously condolences to Caro and the whole family. Met Octa a few times through Caro and footy stuff. I remember going to a reunion of the 1969, the 50th anniversary. Going there, I was seated next to Octa. Him and Graham Richmond really were the architects of the modern Richmond when they moved to the MCG. He was vice president, then he became president from 74 into, I think it was 84. And they won the two flags there, but he was a vice president when they won the previous, the 69 and the 73. So it was when they were a superpower, and it was very much the Eat 'em Alive era, and a ruthless sort of club that took no prisoners, and they took on the then VFL. Obviously sadly missed, and kept his love for the Tigers right through that time. So condolences to the Wilson family, and particularly to our own Caro.
Yeah. Well, on that, we will move on into the footy, and as we sit here on Monday, a colleague, Sam McClure, has broken a story of significance out of last week's AFL CEOs meeting with Andrew Dillon up on the Gold Coast, where a proposal that's been sort of floated in the past without great traction was explored in far more detail and looks to have great interest from the AFL. With the introduction of Tasmania as a 19th team, they're looking at a fixture overhaul, potentially each team only playing each other once and then having a rivalry round and gather round. And spliced into that then, to supplement the lost games, is a secondary competition, either to run concurrently with the season, playing games every few weeks, like the FA Cup is done in the English during the English Premier League season, or in a hiatus in the season in the middle of the year to run a self-contained competition. And the idea would be that potentially even a team could be added to the finals if they do well out of that comp. There's prize money of talk of up to $5 million for whoever won that standalone competition, and the idea that marquee players could even be added to your list. So you could have recent retirees, like, for instance, a Dustin Martin being brought back to just playing that sort of competition because it isn't a full season-long thing. It's just potentially just a bracketed thing.
Which sounds like a Big Bash style thing. Where
it does sound Big Bash.
Coming through to play for the Melbourne Stars or Renegades or whoever he played for. I mean, I like the idea of each team playing each other once, obviously. That's what we want. And then the complication, the gather round. The devil will be in the detail.
Well, they get the gather round, and then they get a rivalry round. So that takes it. That's 18. That's 20 games.
Yeah.
So that's not.
But don't do that, 22. As far as I can see. Like, don't be greedy to add these other two games, which then dilutes the whole purpose of here's this pure fixture that everyone's been wanting, which is just play each other once. Create this other competition that supplements those games. If it's just we play every team home this year, and then we play them away next year, or vice versa, that just gives the purity to the answer that they've been looking for with the inequitable fixture, I think.
Yeah, but they won't remove them, let's face it. They're not going to remove the showdown twice.
Yeah.
It's interesting, there's big debate in the NFL because they're thinking of having one extra game and people are going berserk. That it's too much of a load on the players. The devil will be on the detail in a mini kind of competition mid-season. What do you think, Jake?
Well, I think it's got to be discussed. I'm generally not in favour of this kind of thing, but I have to acknowledge there is a problem, a couple of problems the AFL have got. One is that they don't have a state of origin rival, and I would have thought you could build up the preliminary finals, but they're looking for things that will generate interest. And the NRL is their television competition, and we're going to see that this week with the decider that's going to get, millions of 4 million, 5 million viewers to that New South Wales-Queensland game. They just don't have anything to compete with it. And so they're always looking for something. And also this year we've had a particularly bad year, the AFL supporters, with 8 teams being pretty much out of it from really early. Last year that was not the case. The previous year, 2023, that was not the case. Typically there's 12, 13 teams that can genuinely make the finals right up until the last couple of weeks. This year, we're gone a long way from home.
Yeah, there's really at the moment it's really only Fremantle. Sydney would have to win every single game and win a bunch of them by a big margin to get there.
That has been a problem. The dead rubbers is a problem this year, but I think this year is a bit exceptional.
And adding on to that, there hasn't been many close games. I mean, last year, though, I think I did this last night, 28 games that were decided by a goal or less in the first 17 rounds. This year there's been 18, and there hasn't been for about 3 weeks.
You sat there on a Sunday night at home and...
I was doing a column.
I'll just ask this to either of you either. Do you think there's a problem that it struck me for a long time? There's been a problem in the AFL that there's only the winner of the premiership, and in other competitions and other sports, there are other trophies. Like you guys follow the Premier League. I think this is why this has to be at least discussed and looked at seriously to get some other trophy.
Well, I mean, through soccer, you've got not only the Premier League, you've got the FA Cup, but you've also, which has diminished itself as well now. But the Champions League, you've got multiple countries. You can go and play multiple competitions throughout Europe. So, and then they've got World Cups and that sort of thing at the national level. But I think that it has compounded this year. We've had 5 weeks of buys during which the football was sparse and flat. And then we followed up with a really bad round this round of
9v9.
9v9. And
top 9v.
No top 8 teams playing one another. It was a flat, predictable round. And it just feels like people are disengaging. On top of that, we had we'll get onto some of these topics, but, North Melbourne playing their 100th birthday. It's on a Thursday night, 25,000 people there at best.
Yeah,
those numbers look rubbery to me. Looking at the number of empty seats in the top deck.
Yeah, the top deck was basically closed. It seemed. I mean, that winners thing. Simon Goodwin was talking about this last week, that we need to reward winning, or more ways to reward winning. I don't know about that.
Well, I wondered.
Really?
The way I think of footy now, I don't know what you guys, but I now think of making the top 4, playing in a preliminary final, is now a successful season.
Correct.
And that the whole way people imagine this, like Geelong, there's a table that's gone around of wins since 2000, and then you looked at preliminary finals. Geelong's played in 13 or 14?
Something like that.
And Collingwood's played in 11 or 12, something like that. They played in more than Hawthorn. Hawthorn have won 4 premierships. Now, you can argue Hawthorn's 4 premierships are nowhere near what Geelong's are when you look at what Geelong have done with prelim finals. And if Collingwood win the premiership this year, they've won 3 this century. Is that better than Hawthorn's 4 when you consider they will have, if they have more prelims? But also, it's an interesting debate.
It's an interesting debate, but I don't think it is better than 4.
Also look at coaches. Is Ross Lyon a good coach or not? I mean, 4 grand finals.
No, he's only played in 3.
Yeah,
well,
3 plus.
The 2 draw, the drawn game. Oh, you don't count a draw? That wasn't a grand final, wasn't it?
No, he made 3 grand finals.
I don't count the draw.
John Longmire wins a flag, but then they lose.
But they are good coaches.
Exactly.
Good coaches.
Yeah, but who says they're not?
If you're going to just judge success on whether you win a grand final, that's 100%. The point.
Yeah, but you don't celebrate success if you don't win a grand final. You judge success. Yeah, he's a good coach, but he's got nothing to celebrate.
Gee, that's harsh.
Well, it's true. He's done a great job.
He's got nothing to celebrate.
He's done a great job, but really, he hasn't won a flag. You don't see your St Kilda supporters carrying on about the 2010 grand final, do they?
No, because everyone judges.
No, I guess what I'm saying is this right? Like, is it actually right? Isn't Geelong's record, isn't St Kilda making those preliminary finals and grand finals in that period? They made some under Grant Thomas as well. Isn't that a...
Give everyone a ribbon, Jake. Give everyone a
Jake,
ribbon.
You're absolutely right, but you're convincing no one because the public don't think that. The public judge it on silverware. Yeah. And you can argue as long as you want that the McClellan Trophy winner that finishes top of the ladder is the best.
Well, I think
it doesn't mean anything.
The NFL's winner take all. They're not like the Premier League, and they're the comp that the AFL looks at the most. But they have making the playoffs is actually an achievement.
Yeah, well, I think
making the top four is an achievement.
Coming back to this competition, because it is a significant idea and would be a complete overhaul of the system, and it would coincide with Tasmania coming in. It does strike me that they're coming at it arse about in some ways because it's wanting to address the financial problem, not the inequity of the draft problem of the fixture problem, but. We accept that commercial imperatives are driving everything in the game.
Well, they use the word content when they speak to me. It nearly makes me vomit.
Yeah, they're not games; they're just entertainment content. Yeah, I think that there are myriad issues, not problems, but the issues to be addressed, such as what does it mean for player payment? What does it mean for salary cap? What does it mean for soft cap? What does it, do you change the does it give you the scope with that thing of with the change to have the interstate teams, the Perth teams not travelling successive weeks and doing those sorts of things.
Dusty doing 100 hundreds in May to prepare for his return to football for one competition.
Well, and therefore, when they do this, if it was, say, a hiatus period in the middle of the year, they will sell it like Gather Round and potentially have this mini competition, however it's run, round robin, whatever it is. And those structural things are yet to be decided. Do they get played in Sydney or in Brisbane or Queensland, New South Wales, or is it over in Perth and sell it like the NRL, the WA government and the AFL is very eager to have a state of origin game. That was also discussed at the CEOs meeting last week, and it was also almost presented to the CEOs, I'm told, as we're not really here to discuss this with you. We're looking to do it. That will be a bit different though, because this is, as try as they want, it'll be more of an exhibition game that's held in February, March.
Well, the danger is it segues into anything that resembles AFLX. If it ends up in that wheelhouse, then it's doomed.
The other danger is if it becomes just a competition that's run during the season, concurrent with the season, it feels like the Ansett Cup or Sterling Cup or Artif Cup or whatever.
The Melbourne Footy Club won the first one. It was something to hang their hat on, wasn't
AFLX.
I think so, before they became franchises.
Well, you'd also want the club, but the $5 million might change it, but, St Kilda might win it and Grant Thomas and Lenny Hayes stand there and cry and get upset because they don't want to celebrate.
Apparently the night before the AFLX competition was an absolute boomer, where everyone got together and they laid it on thick and they got on the booze and had to play.
Can we get onto the games?
We can get onto the games. Friday night, the biggest game in Gold Coast history, which is not saying a lot.
They've said that a few times.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But don't run it down, Jake. We're trying to talk up a game. It is on the Gold Coast. It is a Friday night game, which they don't get. It's against Collingwood. They have got the chance to win this and they can really sort of safeguard a top 8 spot. They're sitting there. They've played one fewer games. They're on 10 wins. You'd need 14. But the other interesting thing for me out of it was the fact that at the weekend they played, as did Essendon, 3 tall forwards, and that poses a challenge to Collingwood that I think is going to be relevant to them going into September. So this is a big game, not just in the context of Gold Coast. It's an intriguing game in the context of structurally Collingwood, the top of the ladder. One of their vulnerabilities would be tall forwards, given the makeup of their backline.
Well, the other thing is that Collingwood are going into a mode where, unless there's some catastrophe, they're going to make the top 2.
Mm.
So they've won 14 of 16. They're going to have to win minimum of 17, but it's possible. It's certainly 18. So have we got 7 games? 7 games left. If they win 4, they'll be definitely top 2.
Yep.
Probably first, even with 3 losses. So the incentive is an issue for Collingwood in some games. And this one, the Suns have a lot more to play for than Collingwood. But that doesn't seem, that was the case, I would have thought, with Carlton. And
there's always something to play for playing against Carlton.
Yeah. But Collingwood were pretty merciless in that game.
Gold Coast are a hell of a lot better than Carlton.
Gold Coast are a lot better than Carlton.
Particularly at home.
And up there. So Collingwood had a problem in the previous weeks, speaking to someone down in the Collingwood rooms, that there'd been a bit of a problem with contested ball. They were 18th over a period in the contest, and they made that a focus. And in that game, they went over the past 6 or 7 games, I believe, looked at it and with their oppo people, and they ended up plus 17,
right,
plus 18 against Carlton, with Carlton, who are a good contested ball team. So that was one thing in the game that made it even more one-sided than you would have thought it would have been on Friday night. I mean, I would have thought it would be, I would have thought Carlton would lose by 5 or 6 goals. I didn't think they would get shellacked as early as they were.
I think
I thought the opposite.
Going back to your column, which is last night, about Collingwood's tall defenders, do you think it's a big issue if Frampton, presuming Moore, Howe, and then Frampton comes back, Frampton won't play on Friday night? Do you think it is a vulnerability, or just
No, I do,
wait?
because I think I look at Adelaide and they've got the best forward line in the competition. And you think, well, who stands Thilthorpe? Then you've got Fogarty, then you've got Walker. Now, you can get away with, a Maynard on Walker, potentially.
Well, they did it last time, and Walker was terrible.
He was terrible. But you have got the same, if you go to Geelong, Cameron's there, Neil's there, they can push blitz halves forward, they can do what they can to stretch them. A lot then relies on that. What Collingwood tends to do is roll Darcy Cameron back behind the ball, and he's an excellent sort of intercept marker across that halfback. But it just raises that question of structure over personnel, and they do have a very good defensive structure. They have got Howe that plays tall.
Can I just add a slight dissent to that idea? There's an argument to say that the team that fields the bigger side was also taking a risk.
Yep.
Because if the ball gets to the ground, and Collingwood are pretty good, and a lot of teams are pretty good at getting it to ground, you're in a lot of trouble if you've got Tex Walker playing on a Maynard or someone who can really run. You get in trouble. They have to take a lot of marks. They have to kick arguably the break-even points about 3 goals.
Well, that's what I'm saying, why I find that this game, one of the interesting games, like a subplot within the game because of that. And the fact that Collingwood really does only have one genuine tall defender.
Yep.
Now, that's rare to go in with just the one. So,
and Gold Coast are relying on 3 young guys, Walter, Reid, Ben King's established.
Yeah.
To kick their score.
Reid was really good.
Reid's a good player.
He brought the ball to ground for one of their first goals, then he kicked the next one. Walter is just waiting. You can see that in 2 years he's going to be up there in the Coleman. He's just got that feel about him as a player that's ready to burst. And the other one that's sneaking up this year is Humphrey. He's a genuine
Quietly
talent.
Sleeping Humphrey.
Hello, Humphrey. But admittedly, Friday night last week, the Blues didn't fire a shot. That's not true. The first quarter they were competitive. I actually thought it would have blown out Jake, and I thought it was interesting the way they used De Koning behind in front of the ball, played Pittonet in the ruck. De Koning looked lost. Yeah,
look, this was a dismal game to watch. I was given the punishment of covering it, and it was some of the Carlton fans had voted with their feet, as I put it, because there was a lot of no shows in those. There were a lot of empty seats. I mean, 75. Yeah. They're the only 2 clubs in the comp where you'd say nearly 76,000 is an unders crowd.
Yeah.
But that's what it was, and there was a lot more. There was quite a bit more black and white. I would put.
I think there was only about 50 there by the end of the game.
Well, Carlton supporter I spoke to said they were not going to watch Fantasia and Frankie Evans play in the jumper.
Yep.
That's harsh, I know, but they just said there's no excitement there. It wasn't.
No, it's only harsh. Yeah. They limited it just to those 2.
I know,
this was not as bad. This effort was not as bad as the Port Adelaide effort, which I think was the nadir of the season for Carlton. Like people would say, out of the North loss, and North are no great shakes, and then the loss to Port, and then this one. Well, Collingwood are been the best team in the competition, so it's by definition they were competitive for a quarter. The Port Adelaide game, they conceded the first they didn't kick a goal until 2 minutes before
half time.
Yeah. So the Port game, and they were playing Port They're not who an average team.
Yeah.
So the Port game was clearly worse. I think the effort was there for a quarter, and I think it dropped off.
And Zach Williams was okay playing in the middle. Ashton Moyer showed a bit.
But overall, this is still...
But then no surprise, he then gets injured.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a collision injury, so that's hard on him. But it was his best game for a long time.
Ashton Moyer was okay.
Moyle moves well. He's good size.
Took some
But
marks.
what are they...
Should have bloody gone back a bit further on.
I know, but that can happen.
What are Carlton playing for? Now, they can't make the finals. So, I see a problem here with motivation. Like, they're not playing for anything. You'd say, they're playing for their coach. Well, no.
Well, I think
they're playing for careers. There's some people playing for their careers.
And there's young guys that are coming in wanting to just get a game and play and establish themselves. I think there's always that. There's those that are wanting to. Definitely, the backdrop is they know the conversation that's going on around the level of change that's going to happen at the end of the year. So I think they're playing for that. There's an element of pride and respect.
Surely leaders in the team can actually take handle of that and make sure there's something, even if it is just pride, to play for.
Well, I couldn't help but reflect on the luck of where your career is and where Patrick Cripps, I'm watching him and Wiedering, who are fantastic players, and then comparing them to Scott Pendlebury.
Yeah.
With Scott Pendlebury, who's a better player than Cripps. I'm not, I'm sorry to Carlton fans who have to hold up Cripps as a champion of the game. He's a very, very good player. He's won 2 Brownlows, but there's no way that he's anywhere near Scott Pendlebury as a footballer. But look at the choice of, let's say they're not far from each other. Look what Cripps has had to endure. And look what Pendlebury's at 37 is still able to enjoy playing and running around. And he was, like I said, I compared it to walking the dog. That's what it looked like. It looked like he was just walking around doing what he liked.
He'd get run down at one stage.
I ever thought that Wiedering should take over as captain of Cripps. What are you thinking next year? Just to give Cripps
a breather.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't argue with that as a proposition.
I'm not sure it's going to substantially change where they're at, but
it gives Cripps an opportunity he's carried so much load over so many years.
The big difference for Cripps will be if Sam Walsh starts playing again and Jagger Smith comes in and has some impact. Right. I mean, getting someone else in the midfield would be handy.
Particularly.
I mean, Smith we can't
The other thing about this game is that Collingwood had six or seven players out of their best 22, including 3 small forwards. The Carlton outs are worse, though, because they've got 2 of their top 5.
Yeah,
Mackay and particularly Mackay and Walsh. Walsh in particular, like, they just cannot replace him. Like, he's the number one player they can't replace, in my view, ahead of the key forwards and ahead of even Wiedering.
And Silvani left poor old Harry O'Farrell.
They played through Harry's opponent, didn't they?
Yeah.
And,
that was tough.
Yeah, and having said that, I mean, they also left Mitch McGovern on Jamie Ellett at length when he just... Lipinski kept finding him lace out. Does it give St Kilda pause on Tom De Koning, watching him play that type of game?
Well, I think they're committed.
Or not just that type of game. I think the last month or two hasn't been great for his form.
Well, I said he looked like he'd sort of checked out for St Kilda. Looks like he was headed for St Kilda with the way he played.
I mean, they started him in the forward line, though. I'm sure St Kilda aren't going to do that. They're going to start him in first ruck and let him... So I reckon they can actually unlock his role.
Did you interpret that as them trying to stretch Collingwood and find a target forward, or was this them sort of saying, well, if he's going, we need to
have a look at
Pitnet playing again?
I think the latter.
Do you?
Yep.
Perhaps.
Well, both. Maybe there was a convenience in both, but
De Koning didn't play like a player who was invested.
Yeah.
It was very disappointing.
He was getting taunted by Collingwood fans behind the goals.
I was just thinking of all the things you could do with that money. 1.7 million. Imagine what you could do.
Well, and there's a guy that plays with St Kilda, we'll get to that later, but Nasiah the Messiah, Wanganeen Malira, he was getting praise from
43
touches. So he's going a lot better.
All right, we'll take a break there. We have spoken a lot about the fixtures there. There's a lot more to get through right after this.
We're online all the time. Just search Age Real Footy on Facebook or Twitter.
We had a mantra, war without weapons. Everyone who ran out put his body on the line. I want to see you blokes do that tonight. You look at it. I had a look at Hawthorn last week. And I can tell you what, a lot of you blokes have got a bit to answer for. Tonight, you make sure that you're hard at the ball, you're hard at the man with the ball, you tackle and chase, you put pressure on your opponent, no daydreaming, just go for it and give it your best shot.
Dennis Pagan giving the fire and brimstone. Did it move you?
I enjoyed it, and I was. I said it was a punishment to go to Carlton Collingwood. I was at the function for the North 100-year thing with the 75 players. I got to say, what a privilege it was. Not the game, but to be in the room with Malcolm Blight and Wayne Schimmelbusch and Keith Gregg, and to speak to those guys. I didn't speak to Schimmer, but I spoke to Blighty and Keith Gregg and Wayne Carey, and
you spoke to David Dench
last week. It was great to get his thoughts. They're old timers now. They're in their 70s, but they're shin boners really.
Yeah.
They're from West Brunswick and Coburg and so on. They're no frills.
It did seem like there were others there as well, that from Carey, and that they were excited to be in the room with all these other guys as well.
Well, I said this on radio yesterday, but just say to Sam Kikovich, if he's boycotted this or he's chosen not to because of the AFLW sharing the podium with him, you missed a great night.
Yeah.
It was just, you're there for your teammates. And I think everyone who went that I saw really enjoyed it, and they dismissed that as an issue.
Yeah.
And the AFLW players just seamlessly fitted in with everyone. It wasn't, and what struck me was what a group of colourful players and great players North Melbourne had from both the 70s and the 90s. And I think what's sort of interesting is that when North think of reunions are fraught, as they have been with Wayne Carey and Anthony Stevens, but it's the 70s players. To talk footy with Malcolm Blight is such a privilege, where he always tells you something that you just hadn't even thought of.
And Dennis Pagan hit the current group between the eyes for their performance against Hawthorn when he said, a few of you blokes got something to answer for. I like that.
He wasn't letting them off the hook and just making it emotional about the night, was it?
That's great.
I've been watching, boys, and you owe us something.
Yeah, and they started I said to Clarkson after the game, we were a bit worried when they kicked the first two that Pagan might have put them on the wrong track. He had a laugh, but they fought back well.
I'm just disappointed that some paganisms weren't used in the speech, like Jack Hill, the blind miner, could have seen that one. Or one, I remember he said to me once, I'll be coming off the long run, son. I'll be coming off the long run. And I tell you what, I won't be bowling Freddie Titmus off spinners. If you don't know, for the 90% of people who don't know who Fred Titmus was, he was an English off-spin bowler who bowled a long time ago when Dennis Pagan was probably a child.
What do you think of we touched on it before, but disappointing still, though. The Thursday night thing,
horrendous.
You can run and hide from, you can present the numbers, but the fact is people don't want to go.
No, I heard a bloke on radio who said he'd driven from Horsham because he thought it was such a big occasion as a North supporter, but he had to take 2 days off work.
Yeah.
Now that's commitment.
Isn't it?
But why would no one would do that?
The AFL admits that it is Thursday night is a broadcaster first night. So if you've got a celebration night where you want a lot of fans to go there, that is therefore by definition the night you don't hold an event like a game like this.
100%.
Well, they put the sponsors first, didn't they? And the exposure on
free to wear.
Free to wear.
So this is the Saturday problem. This game screamed of absolutely in a previous broadcast arrangement. It's a Saturday
night game.
And I guarantee I can't prove this, but there'll be over 30,000.
Oh.
The crowd would be over 30. It would be 32.
It'd be closer to 40.
Yeah.
It'd be closer to 40.
It'd be
35.
bigger. People
probably.
wouldn't be rushed.
Because it's not just that. You've also got, there's a lot of Bulldogs fans that want to watch their team at the moment, and they're also just not going on a Thursday night.
Well, they're thinking, it's Thursday night, it's cold. And
they've got to be at work tomorrow.
I've got to be at work tomorrow.
It's just that this game magnified or eliminated the whole issue of that Thursday nights, as popular as they are with the AFL and with broadcast and with the TV audience, they're not popular with people attending the game. And
it's hard enough as it is. I mean, even silly things like the Frankston line's closed, and I drove past, people are sitting at Moorabbin waiting for a bus at midnight on a Thursday night. And they're all with their scarves and all that sort of stuff, as if you're doing that. I didn't stop to pick up North supporters. No disrespect.
Move on. Hawthorn got the points, probably even, I think, Sam Mitchell would have said or hit it not unconvincingly, but uncomfortably. Certainly.
Thrashed in the inside 50s.
Yeah.
St Kilda's ball use gave them much more opportunity to rebound Hawthorn, which they were lucky. If St Kilda had used it in a half-decent fashion, they would have...
St Kilda give the ball to Wangan and Malira for a reason.
Yeah, I know.
Because a lot of them can't kick it as well as he can.
No, that's true.
Or at all. Higgins missing from directly in front. I
know. That was weird. Apparently he snaps from there all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that, but anyway.
It was actually the flip of what is normally the commentary on that. They were criticising him for not kicking a snap.
And I remember when they spat at St Kilda when he was referred to as Missy Higgins. Remember that?
Yeah.
No, it was horrendous.
Is it fair to say that Jack, when he has the goals in his sights, has a bit of tunnel vision?
Oh, Sean Manitou. Same.
He doesn't really see.
It'd be nice if it was a tunnel
advantage positions.
Yeah.
Nice if the tunnel was just between the goalposts because they weren't just sprayed out. But Wanganeen Miller, you couldn't avoid being the story. I really liked what Ross Lyons said about him. That there's a bit of an overlap with Bergman, I think, and Bergman was going. Evidently, and you don't know for certain, but it felt like part of the rationale of staying and the attraction of staying was he was finally moved into the midfield and he's blossomed, and you immediately say, geez, he's a seriously even better player than you thought he could be.
This is Bergman you're talking about.
Bergman. And then on the weekend we saw Wanganeen Miller playing on the ball, and Ross said, look, I tried him there early on and his body just couldn't hold up. But he just said that he borrowed from Malcolm Blight and saying, well, I want him to be not just a great halfback, a great midfielder, and I think he'd be a great forward. I want him to be a great player, regardless of position, and thinks that he can push forward. Sam Mitchell was in awe of him, saying, I'm going to have nightmares about him. They put blokes to him. They couldn't stop him. And he's
a beautiful player to watch. And someone compared him to Andrew McLeod. There was a bit of that.
Well, that was Ross.
Yeah. He's a beautiful mover. He's obviously much more skinny than McLeod, but they can build a team around him.
Just with McLeod, just to put a bit of pause on it, he's got some McLeod traits, but McLeod was much better at winning his own ball.
Oh, yeah, and he was explosive.
McLeod had enormous power and strength, not just an outside glider. This guy's a beautiful player, but he's an outside glider.
Yeah,
McLeod was a powerful player. He'd get in and get it.
100%. No, McLeod's 10 times better than
Wanganeen. Well, he's the best player that's played for the Crows, on what I've seen.
Yeah. But you can build a team around Wanganeen Malira, which I don't reckon before Saturday night you're starting to think, oh, well, he's a good half, good defender, but you need a few other holes.
That's right. But it also, like compared to a few weeks ago when they had the loss, and you thought, what was the interest in watching this? Like they played stodgy footy, lose a game, they got old blokes that you're going, oh, there's no future in those blokes that are playing. You come away from the other night and you go, Taru looks like he could be a really, really seriously good player. You got Wanganeen Miller, you've seen Darcy Wilson playing. There was, even though they lost that game, St Kilda fans come away from that more hopeful and excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wish they'd scored a bit more, but Taru and Nasai, if they keep, and it sounds like the tea leaves are pointing to Wanganeen Miller doing a 2-year deal and staying, which would be great for the Saints. And then you've got Taru, who the battle, that's just a no-brainer that they lose battle. He helps Hawthorn. Hawthorn didn't give up anything. That's a win-win for both clubs. Battle could help Hawthorn win a premiership, certainly help them get to the top 4 in the next couple of years. At the same time as they've got this exciting player who his first game he had 14 spoils.
Yeah.
And then he took a mark. That was a slightly Nick Riewoldt-esque mark, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Running.
And kick for goal as well. Slightly Nick Riewoldt-esque.
But he also, he's been playing behind the ball. He went forward for that mark on the weekend. He looks like you'd like to see him as a forward, but he just looks exciting no matter where he's playing.
Yeah, and the other thing is, for St Kilda, don't complain about academies and all these things. Just get your recruiting. When you get your recruiting right, as they have with Taru and as they did with Wanganeen Miller, you can get there.
Yeah.
This is something that's very achievable if you make good decisions and you pick the right players, and it's 90% the players. As Malcolm Blight was saying to me up in the room, in the Horizon room there, was talking about how it's, coaching is less important than the cattle on the field, which is eternal.
Well, Yabby Jeans used to say that, wouldn't he? I don't want to be the greatest coach. I want to have the greatest team. Give me the best players, and that can that's all you need. But like St Kilda, Richmond's been going through that, looking to the next generation. The Sam Lawler injury was a frustrating one, no more so than for him. But same leg, probably got himself a trip to Germany to go and see Earl Fart and
calf's blood.
Calf's blood.
Disappointing and worrying for him.
Yeah,
they'll need a lot of work because it's the third one. I think he did one similarly in his under 18 year.
He did one in I can't remember, at the end of his bottom age year, and he carried it through his last year. I remember speaking, to him and to, sadly, the late Troy Selwood about who had got him into Geelong Grammar, into that program.
Yeah.
He's a tremendous talent, and I can see Richmond have taken a bit of a punt. They went in knowing that there was a slight concern about his body holding up. He's physically, if I had to describe him, people compare him to Dusty and to Petrarca, but he is very similar to Jordan De Goey. Like, even to look at his body, and Jordan De Goey, like Patrick Dangerfield later in his career, but not early so much, has had a lot of hamstring, soft tissue injuries with that big frame. So this is going to be a project, and Richmond, if they get this right, this guy will be a dead set gun. He's got that level of ability, but it's a
worry because
$10 million question.
There've been two. The ones this year I don't think have been small hamstrings either. So
there's a chance he'll have surgery on this one.
Yeah,
that's the debate they were having yesterday.
He was pick one. You can see why he's the big body.
Yeah.
He's very similar to those players we mentioned.
Yeah, it's just a worry, isn't it, when you've got soft tissue? It's a bit like George Wardlaw. Really exciting talents that you just know on a tightrope. Yeah.
Isn't it the Gleese? You follow the AFLX, the explosive players. Have you got some
line
on this?
I don't have a line on that. I know that they look at running mechanism and technique, and what does he do something different in the way he runs, in the hips and the way he moves forward. But I think it comes down to individuals, doesn't it? Like, Scott Gumbleton hadn't had a hamstring and then didn't do anything but hamstrings and was a unrealised talent.
It's just such an sort of examined part of being a professional sports person when you've got these injuries. Like how much Sam Lawler, how much work he's going to have to do on technique and gait and mechanism. So repetitive and boring.
The other club that's looking at that is Essendon, where you've got they're now having they'll be reviewing their and overhauling, I should expect, their conditioning because just Reid again out at the weekend, just when you thought he was going to be in, and that's potentially not that it matters in the context of their season now because they're done, but there is a fair chance to win that game with him back in the team. The number of injuries that they've had and soft tissue injuries they've had, I think there'll be changes there in there.
Well, the other thing is some of the players, if you look at Langford, hamstring, Reid, hamstring, and Parrish, calf, now they're repeat injuries, aren't they?
Yeah.
So there's an occurrence factor with those three players. And there's been other players as well. Even Draper. I mean, if I'm an Essendon official, I'm not going overboard to keep Draper.
No.
They want to keep him, but I'm not fighting them on the beaches.
No, I think they
keep Draper.
They're absolutely.
The draft pick would be very nice.
Yeah.
And how many games has he played under Brad Scott?
Yeah.
20 games? 15 games?
I think more than that.
We'll get ahead. We'll get a count at some point.
Well, they also, if he goes, and I've had those discussions with people at Essendon, it'd be highly unlikely that they would chase a replacement. Like they're not going to go and chase
Bryant.
Yeah, Brian, and then Visentini is coming on. He's only played 1 or 2 games now, but shows a bit. But he's still, he's thin as a post. But they'll invest time in those players rather than say chasing a Riley O'Brien as a ready-made replacement or something like that. Maybe they could pick up if you're giving away nothing, they wouldn't do anything to dilute any compensation that you would get.
Just quickly, just to pose this question. Out of St Kilda and Essendon, because they're similar, I think they're similarly placed. They're both rebuilding teams, no matter what they say. Who's better placed at the moment for the young talent that's coming through?
I think St Kilda.
Do you? Yeah.
You keep Nasiah. You've got Taru, and you've got
you still got Sinclair.
Sinclair's mid-20s.
You've got Travalia coming through. You got Wilson. You got King if he comes back. You got Philippou.
Yeah,
that's a reasonable bunch of guys that
Owens
can play.
still
Owens, Max Hall looked all right.
Okay. So Essendon, you've got Caddy, who looks like a standout.
Yeah.
You've got Kako, who's a handy small forward.
He'll get better.
You've got
Durham's young still.
You've got Durham and Martin are still relatively young. Yep. And I like Zach Reid, if he can stand up, and would Ridley. Be really good. Ridley, who's mid-20s. So you would have a couple of others, wouldn't you? I quite like Zach Johnson.
I actually really like what Archer May's already been doing, coming straight in as a mid-season pick. So to me, he'll go past Peter Wright.
I think Essendon would have a better chance of attracting players. So that would be my...
Yeah, well, that history says that.
Yeah, so I think that's their advantage. They don't need quite as many.
All right, on that note, we'll take a break, come back with some quick questions.
Get access to every episode as it drops. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, well, had 17 tackles and got tagged, didn't he? So, look, there were some instances, and no, I'm not even going to say it, actually. I just think he battles manfully, this kid. You know, he's a pleasure to coach, and we are so lucky to have him in our organisation. You know, the way he goes about the game, the way he hunts the ball. There's a reason he's one of the best players in the competitions, because he works harder than everyone else. You know, the amount of work he does to get himself to a very high level, there's no question why he's become one of the best players in the AFL.
Welcome back, and we'll go straight into quick questions. The AFL last week announced that they were changing umpire contact rules, and basically from 4 collisions with an umpire onwards and charges, you can face the tribunal and potentially a suspension. Players are carrying their priors with them, so you've got a player like Matt Rowell. And this is a quick question, mind you. Players in Matt Rowell's position are already on 4. Should they potentially miss a Brownlow medal, Pete Ryan, for umpire contact?
Not only should they not miss a Brownlow medal for umpire contact, they should not be suspended for umpire contact if they've got 4 priors. It's a ridiculous knee-jerk reaction, and I don't think it was necessary at all. If they want to keep fining them, that's fine, or if they want to set up a rule at the end of the season that you can't set up at the bounce behind the umpire, that's fine too. There might be some sort of zone, but no is the short answer.
I'll make a prediction here that if he goes to the tribunal, that's Rowell.
Yeah.
And of course, some people here probably can't speak about what happens at the tribunal, but I'd say he would be fined.
Well, the change that they made was that you go to the tribunal where you can get a bigger fine or a suspension. My guess would be the first instance you go to the tribunal, you get a bigger fine. And then if you have a 5th or 6th offence, and you're back again at the tribunal, you might then be likely to
get a week.
Get a week, but you can't. I don't think anyone after their 4th going to the tribunal is going to be suspended.
Quickly, Pete, is he using the umpire as cover to as a tactic?
It looks like he is.
Yeah, well, yes. That's a little bit more sus.
Absolutely, but then he's getting held as well. He's getting held at those stoppages.
I'd say pay free kicks.
Well, pay free kicks could be an answer, but how do you have a cumulative penalty when no one knows that you're getting closer to a tribunal until this rule comes in? Or because they know that if they started the clock now, you've got 2 years before anyone actually cares less about. I'm just saying this is what the AFL's view will be. You've got 2 years before anyone, or 18 months before anyone worries about potentially heavier penalty.
That's the longest quick question.
That is the longest. In fact, the question was longer than the answer.
Roger Vaughan.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rog.
Has Ken Hinkley already handed over the coaching reins effectively, even though he's still the nominal man in charge? He's hamming it up regularly now.
I don't think he's effectively handed it over, no. But I think in the next few weeks it'll be apparent there'll be moves made about assistants, etc. at Port Adelaide very soon. And Josh Carr will have his imprint on things.
He's relaxed, isn't he?
Yeah.
And fair enough too. They're out of finals calculations. He's been hard at it for 10 years and he cracked a gag because he had a lolly in his mouth or something.
He still hasn't got it to the level of Bomber Thompson, who was at the time in premiership contention of eating a salad roll or a ham roll in the box.
He needs to go around with the aeroplane thing, Kenny, one last time.
There are also those other more wistful moments, such as when he sees Pal Pepper go down and realise, well, I'm not going to coach that bloke in a game again. You know, when you lose, those lasts that he's going to start doing at Port, make it a bit more emotional. And final question: did Fremantle make a mistake in trading Lloyd Meek as part of the Jager O'Meara deal and keeping Sean Darcy instead.
Yes.
Do you think so? Why?
Because they were investing. If you look at the amount they were paying Darcy, this is a very simple thing. It's nothing against Darcy per se. They were spending a lot on Jackson, so you're getting up to about $1 million. They were spending getting closer to $2 million or 1.8 or whatever. It's in that realm on 2 ruckmen, and I think that's a poor use of your salary cap.
I think
in today's world,
that's true. I think Lloyd Meek's obviously got better since the ruck rule changed.
Yes,
and it's helped his career. Darcy, it's probably helped him because they're similar types, but I think Darcy's trajectory when Meek was traded was a lot higher than Meek's.
Yeah, that's right. So this is only.
Yeah, but I think my point is Meek was a lot cheaper.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And they were over indexed, which is how people say it, on rucks.
I think that's right. But would Meek have stayed? I mean, wouldn't Meek have just said, "I don't want to be second banana"?
He had to inherit something. But he. But I think the more critical point is, as you said, that the rule changed. His first year at Hawthorn, he didn't get a look in.
No,
and then the rule changed, and he blossomed as a player. That is all we've got time for this week. Thanks to you both for joining us, and thanks also to Channel 7 and Fox Footy for the audio we've used in this episode. If you'd like to get in touch, you can do so via email, realfootypod@theage.com.au. Don't forget to subscribe, rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. The Tipping Podcast will be back on Thursday with Pistol Pete Ryan. Catch you then.